going, everybody? This is the Nitty Gritty. My name is Chad. With me is Leonard. And this week, we are going to be bringing you a new installment of our Spotlight series. We haven't done one of those in a while, but we are going to be talking about someone very specific and a very specific point in their career. But before we get there, I would like to say that I went to the AEW Dynamite and Rampage tapings. Dynamite was live. Rampage was taped this past Wednesday in Long Island at the UBS Arena where the Islanders play. Very nice arena. I had never been there before. Getting there was not fun, but the arena itself was very nice. Leonard, I had a sandwich called the Islander, which is a blue and yellow marble bagel with breaded chicken and blue cheese. It was very good.
Okay, I'm picturing that in my head. Now, if it was like a hot chicken with blue cheese, I think I might like that better. And I would also have to ask, what does that have to do with the islands?
I don't know, but the sandwich was called the Islander.
Yeah,
maybe because the bagel was on there. I don't know.
Because Jews living on an island.
Hey, it was a good sandwich.
Okay,
and apparently it was at the barbecue establishment that Shaq owns, which friend of the show Erik told me. Anyway, so the AEW, it started with AEW Dark. I didn't catch all of that because I was standing in the merch stand because I wanted to get my Danhausen shirt. Damn it. But I did catch some of AEW Dark, which is what it was. It was, squash matches and whatnot, but entertaining stuff. The Dynamite show was very good. You had a lot of good matches on there for a TV show taping anyway. You had Adam Cole versus Dax Harwood. You had Jamie Hayter versus Tony Storm. You had Jeff Hardy versus Darby Allin, among others. There was some good quality, television type matches. For Rampage, you had Scorpio Sky versus Frankie Kazarian. And what was it? Ruby Soho versus Riho, I believe. Some of these matches for the Owen Hart tournament. So overall, it was a good show. They even had stuff after the TV tapings, which made the news, that being Hook, Taz's son, coming out and taking down CM Punk, who was not liked in Long Island. But MJF, of course, was, and there was the MJF Wardlow signing. So anyway, vocal crowd.
How long was the whole taping? And how long was it?
So from 7 to about 11:30. Yeah,
that's too long.
It's like 3 different shows plus the goodbye to the fans.
Right. Yeah. But still, I wouldn't do that much. I think you're burned out by the end of that.
It was a long haul. I enjoyed it. Definitely, I recommend going to the taping if you can. But that is modern happenings. We are going back in our time machine, and for our Spotlight series, we are going to be covering Erik Watts Post-2000. I bet you no other podcast or show on YouTube has done this specific type of show on Erik Watts. There are plenty of shoot interviews out there with him,
right?
Videos
and people talking about him.
Yes, there's plenty of that out there, but we are going to be covering a very specific part of his career. And if we're being honest, Leonard and I have been shelving this topic for a few weeks now, and it just because we would think of other things that got pushed forward. And, now having researched this topic, I kind of know why our subconscious is doing that, Leonard. Sometimes coming out of these Spotlight series, we end up being a fan of said individual superstar, and like the Gambler, for example.
Yeah, I knew even someone like Mantar,
right,
we had an appreciation for by the end of the episode.
I don't know if this show is going to be that way.
No, this is the most painful episode that we had to do. Most of what I was finding on YouTube was his TNA run from 2002 to 2005. I watched about a half a dozen matches over the course of a couple of days because it got to the point where it felt like my brain was bleeding. I had to stop.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised TNA still exists at this point, because this stuff with Watts early, yeah, that's a different topic. But this stuff early on with Watts was painful, painfully bad to watch. And I don't think he was on an island on in and of himself at that period either. I mean, I didn't watch early TNA because it was, the weekly pay-per-view style.
You had to pay $15 for that.
Yeah, and I just didn't get that. I would have to go back and figure out when I did start watching TNA.
Yeah, I mean, really quick. I heard about it. I heard about their weekly stuff, and I heard about it. I kept hearing about this guy named, honestly, AJ Styles. I kept hearing about this guy named The Amazing Red. Like, I kept hearing about these matches that these guys were having, and so I was curious. But it's like, well, $15 a week. Shoot, I can't do that.
Yeah, those guys were on an island.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were the island. They weren't what was mainly happening on these programs, which we'll get to.
Right. Well, so let's give a little bit of background about Erik Watts pre-2000 before we jump into the topic at hand. He was born December 19th, 1967. He is the son of wrestler and promoter Bill Watts. He is best known for his appearances in World Championship Wrestling and the World Wrestling Federation in the 1990s. His height is 6'5", and his build weight was 262. So he is a big boy. His alma mater is the University of Louisville. He was a quarterback there, and from what I understand, he was a good one. So he made his debut on August 27th, 1992. For World Championship Wrestling. And it should be noted that Bill Watts was the booker at this time. Now, real quick, Leonard, in my research, I will say that I found that he made his TV debut after only 27 days of training.
Yeah, I think I've been watching Young Rock. I think even The Rock had more training than that before his first match with the Brooklyn Brawler.
Right. So I have to apologize also to the people out there. I'm coming off of a little bit of a cold. So
COVID.
The occasional coughing. So, yeah, we're not going to go over his entire WCW run here. But
one thing I do want to mention that I think is very important is the fact that he was in 1992 declared the PWI Rookie of the Year. But at the same time, the Wrestling Observer newsletter had him as the most overrated, least favorite, and his push being the most disgusting promotional tactic of the year.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that because I found that as well. And it is. It's very interesting when you see those two back side by side, those two facts. So it is worth noting that his run in WCW was met with a lot of controversy because he gained victories over Michael Hayes, Bobby Eaton, The Barbarian, Tony Atlas, Chris Benoit, and Paul Orndorff, just to name a few. Mm-hmm. He went to draws with people like Steve Austin and Rick Rude. Now, I should add that Watts does have a pinfall victory listed against Austin, but I found a clip where Austin said he outright refused to put him over and, gave the reasons why, because Austin was doing all these great matches with Steamboat and Sting, and then they want him to put over Erik Watts. And, he was willing to do the Broadways with Erik Watts, but that was about it. Watts went nearly 4 months being undefeated. And, this was during a time when Bill Watts, his father, was not a very liked individual. He was cutting people's pay. He was known for being a bully. And here you have his son coming up and getting pushed to the moon. There was a segment on, I believe, Super Brawl 3, where they had Erik Watts make an appearance with Bruno Sammartino and the then WCW champion Ron Simmons, just because. So they were clearly going out of their way to push him. And it
should be mentioned he was green as grass. He was so terrible. I don't remember the match. You can find it on YouTube. But there's a match where he throws the worst drop kick, of all time. He barely gets up to knee level. And That's become like the measuring stick for a bad drop kick. The
Yeah.
Erik
Yeah, absolutely.
drop kick scale. I, was watching NWA during this period, WCW. We talked about that. I was more of a WCW guy than you. And I remember Erik Watts existing, but I don't remember a whole lot about him. It wasn't until, later on when I started getting on the internet and reading stuff like Wrestle Crap. And again, that Wrestling Observer newsletter contrast to a kayfabe publication, Pro Wrestling Illustrated, kind of shows you that Erik Watts had this reputation for being terrible. And there's a lot of terrible guys out there, but with Erik Watts, and especially during this early period in WCW, it was a perfect storm, I think, of the fact of who his dad was, the push he was getting because of who his dad was, because of how just awful he was in the ring and on the mic. And two, and this is something I think we're going to talk about later, at least I want to talk about more later, Erik Watts thinks he's fantastic.
Oh, yeah, we'll get there. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's the way that he carries himself is another thing that just ticks people off.
Yeah, absolutely. His final match in WCW during the first run anyway was August 1st, 1994 against Jean-Paul Levesque. And
that guy never turned into anything.
Yeah, I know. He was nothing. He would come into the World Wrestling Federation in 1995. Now, I will say that one of the shoot interviews that I listened to with Erik Watts, the facts here are kind of conflicting. So Wikipedia says that Watts followed his father to the WWF, but according to Erik Watts, he was there already, and then Bill Watts came in. So I don't really know, nor do I care. He was in a tag team, though, in this occasion called Techno Team 2000. And his name was Troy, and he was paired together with Chad Fortune, who was named Travis. The gimmick was they were representing cutting-edge cyber culture, that popular fad.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they would have some matches with Smoking Guns and Brooklyn Brawler and Barry Horowitz, that legendary tag team. But he would they were absent for TV for a long time. Then they resurfaced in 1996, but didn't really do anything. So, if he blinked, they might have missed their run there.
Yeah, I don't think I remember them at all from that. It was, again, seeing them show up on websites like Wrestle Crap and such later on.
Well, it's worth noting that one of the only clips you'll see from the WWE YouTube channel, and I found this to be hilarious, you'll see a clip of Techno Team 2000, and the title of said video is Boring Wrestling Tag Teams. And Techno Team 2000, a minute and a half clip of them is shown there. So there you go. Make of that what you will. He would return to WCW on April 16th, 1998 on an episode of Thunder. And he had a little bit of a run there, basically as a glorified jobber at that point. He would win a match against Yuji Nagata, but his last match was a loss against the Disco Inferno. And that will bring us to the topic at hand, which is 2000. Now, I should say that there are some podcast quotes out there that are worth mentioning because it's mostly from the part in his career we just mentioned. Bruce Pritchard talked about him a few times, basically saying that he really didn't know what specific quality it was, why he didn't get over. Maybe it was his personality that didn't translate to TV. Maybe it was his attitude. Maybe he just couldn't get out of that first gear. He was pretty nice in his comments, I would say. Eric Bischoff was also somewhat kind. He said his push made a bad situation in WCW at the time even worse. He says he doesn't blame Eric. He blames Bill Watts because everybody hated Bill Watts at the time, and they probably took a lot of that out on Eric. It didn't help that he wasn't very good. But we forgot to mention the fact that he put an STF on Arn Anderson at a gas station. That clip is out there as well. So let's get to the year 2000. He joined the Philadelphia-based Extreme Championship Wrestling in 2000, and he lost to Spike Dudley in about 3 seconds in his ECW arena debut. And I, for a while, Leonard, couldn't find this. And then I came upon like a clip of his debut. It didn't say it was a match. I know now why the match isn't listed as its own video. But it was like him being introduced by somebody named Lou E. Dangerously.
Yes, that was signed Guy Dudley.
Yeah.
Taking on a fake Paul E. Dangerously persona.
Right. And so, yeah, Spike Dudley, who was then known as like a giant killer type thing, came out and beat him very quickly. And I don't know if the history of what they were talking about in the promo, the fact that Bill Watts got rid of Paul Heyman, it seemed like Paul maybe brought him in just to like kind of, stick it to Bill a little bit, maybe a little bit. I don't know.
I would guess so. And as long as Eric got paid for it, then.
Right. Yeah.
But knowing Paul Heyman, he may not got paid for it.
Well, yeah. He made 4 appearances in ECW total from November 9th, 1999 to March 18th, 2000. And, he had good things to say about ECW. He praised the passion that they had. So, who knows? After that, he would go to All Japan Pro Wrestling. And he was there from May 20th, 2000 to June 9th, 2000. He had a really short run there. We'll talk about some of those matches later. None of them are available to be viewed as far as I'm aware, but we'll get to some of his matches sometime later. After that, he was with Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling in 2001, which was Dusty Rhodes' promotion in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. He apparently won the TCW tag team titles there with Scotty Riggs. Couldn't find any of that stuff.
No, I know a guy here in Ohio, Dusty Dillinger, that worked for Turnbuckle.
Okay. That's interesting. See, I wish some of that stuff was out there. He would go to NWA Total Nonstop Action in 2002. And this kind of brings us to the main part of our show here. Because
there's tons of this out there.
Yeah, and you know what? Even the matches that are not on YouTube, the Impact app has all of this stuff. I've watched a bunch of them were on YouTube, but there were some matches that I looked up on the Impact app just because I was curious as to what it was. For example, he started out in a stable with Brian Lawler and David Flair. They were called Next Generation. And his first match was the 6-man against D'Lo Brown, Dusty Rhodes, and Jeff Jarrett. And, before this match, he does a sit-down promo with Mike Tenay, and you can hear people in the background shouting, boring. And you know what? This character in that promo is as close to the real Erik Watts as you're going to get, because this is like a cocky guy who, thinks that he was great and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, the 6-man is what it is. Dusty Rhodes is very old at this point. It was mainly a showcase for D'Lo of all people at that point, because D'Lo could still go very well. So that's how he got started. He would get into other feuds. We'll touch base as we go through the matches that we watched here. Leonard, why don't you talk about some of the matches you saw, and we'll kind of touch on his various storylines.
Yes. So at some point after what you've just mentioned, he becomes the Director of Authority, which they call DOA, which I don't know is a jab at him for being dead on arrival. But while he is the Director of Authority, Don Callis has a sort of a consultant position. So they are overriding each other. Watts says something, Callis changes it. Callis has his own security guys who are known as red shirt security. They're wearing red shirts. Watts' guys are in black shirts. And so it's several matches. And he is still wrestling at this point, mostly, taking out guys who are Callis's people. Per se. Now this all culminates in a match I really want to talk about. I don't know if you watched it, but it's a no DQ match between Callis and Watts in January of 2004.
Yep. Oh yeah, I watched that one.
So you know when I had the stupid question about the match that you would show space aliens to teach them what wrestling was. This is the match I would not show them.
Yeah.
So first of all, there's a promo before it, which is bland, which is boring, which rambles on too long. Erik Watts calls Jeff Jarrett Triple J, and I don't think that was ever a thing.
Thank you for mentioning that, because it bothered the hell out of me, and I was like, is that something I missed on the episode? Maybe.
Right? Yeah. Was it a jab at Triple H? Was that something he was doing at a time? I know. I just think he messed up. He messed up. Now, he did say one thing I love. He said that the situation with Don Callis was 5 months of funk. And I want that on a T-shirt. Like 5 months of funk. Totally out of context.
I'm going to make a mock-up of that and put it here.
Yes. Put that up there. But here's the thing. This is, you heard the old term, like a hat on a hat. This is a hat on a hat on a hat on a hat. This is like a Dr. Seuss book cover of stacked hats in this match, because it's no DQ. It's job versus job. A bunch of the talent comes out handcuffed to each other, which really isn't explained. It's sort
not
of
at all.
I guess the idea is if they're handcuffed to each other, they're not going to interfere.
Which doesn't affect that at all.
Doesn't change anything. Jeff Jarrett handcuffs Mike Tenay to the guardrail, and it's not really explained why he did that.
Right.
Other than the fact that I guess Tenay is leaning toward Watts, but he's not going to do anything. He's Mike Tenay. And one of the funniest spots ever, I love this, is that Watts throws Callis into the crowd, and then he backs up like as far as he can against the opposite guardrail. And he just stays there forever. And then he runs, and then he does like a hurdle jump, not a suicide dive. He hurdle jumps the rail, and Callis smacks him in the face with a chair. Like, what was he even trying to do there?
Yeah. Well, and that brings up a larger point to me, is that one of the things that didn't change throughout his career is how awkward he is in the ring.
Yeah.
Like, there are some moves that he can do, but when it comes to psychology, ring awareness, execution, like, he's just very awkward all around. And I don't think that changed. And, despite in the interview that I watched where he talks about all the different people that trained him, which includes people from Japan and Harley Race and this, that, and the other, they couldn't give him what he needed, which was, the it factor, really.
Yeah. In this match, he throws a big boot that misses by about that much, for those of you watching on YouTube. And that's a move he does all the time. And I noticed as we go on to later matches, they learn this. So when he throws the big boot, they either do like a behind angle or a wide shot. But here it's close up, and you can see how bad he misses.
Yeah.
You take this and the bad drop kick, and Erik Watts should just not use his feet. Just don't do any leg moves.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm going to finish up here by saying, so this is a no DQ match, and we get a ref bump. There was a ref bump in a no DQ match, which involves Trinity coming in to interfere, and then Erik Watts' valet Goldilocks turns on him while the ref is out. She doesn't need to when the ref is out. The ref can stare right at it. It's fine. It's a no DQ match. So this was overbooked. It's stupid. It's horrible. I know I jumped over a lot of stuff to get to this match, but I so wanted to talk about how bad this match was.
No, yeah. That was probably, it's like the most epic of badness that his matches in TNA would show. And, before we get some of his other matches, let's talk about and illustrate for the people out there what he was wearing during the run in TNA.
Yes.
Because he looked like, and I guess his second run in WCW, he would dress similarly. He looked like an older Hardy Boy. Like, Erik Watts is 36 to mid to late 30s during his run in TNA.
Yes.
And he looked like he was trying to impersonate the Hardy Boys. or maybe being an unofficial third member of Chronic. I don't know. And like, here's the thing. He takes credit for why the Hardy Boys dressed like they do or did. Like he takes credit for that. And we'll get to the other things that he takes credit for, because it's going to irritate me. But that's one of the things that he takes credit for. He looks ridiculous. Like a guy in his mid to late 30s who's trying to look much younger, trying to look cool, with the ponytail and the soul patch and, whatever it just.
And also the fact that he sticks out like a sore thumb, the fact that he's 6'5". Right. And I know you said he was built at 265. That's a damn lie. He's too lanky. He's maybe 235.
Right. Sure.
But he's got a lanky frame. But yeah, he looks ridiculous. You're right. I don't know if it's just necessarily the age or just a man that size dressing like that. But yeah, it's ridiculous. It's not. Again, it's not wrestling gear.
Right. Some of the other matches that we came across, now as Leonard mentioned, he had like a feud going with his on-screen girlfriend, Goldilocks. Mm-hmm. So there would be matches surrounding that. He would have a bunch of matches with Abyss. Now, this is before and during and after Abyss actually got the name Abyss. But he had a series of matches with Abyss. He lost all of them as far as I can tell. He once played a fake La Parka in a match against Alex Shelley.
Yes, I love that match. The next time I do a fantasy wrestling draft, I'm going to draft Erik Watts and put him in the La Parka outfit.
Absolutely, because that's the most over gimmick that he had. He faced Kid Cash in a grudge match, and Kid Cash did everything he could, to make that match somewhat tolerable.
I will say the Abyss matches aren't bad. They're all overbooked. Everything he does is overbooked. But the Abyss matches aren't bad. And the Kid Cash matches, again, he's doing all he can, but he's terrible. And I think he does seem to do better against bigger guys.
I agree.
He's the carnival ride. You have to be this tall to wrestle Erik Watts.
Yeah.
So the Abyss matches were by far the best stuff that he did. And Kid Cash, it's Kid Cash versus a broomstick. I mean, when Kid Cash is on offense in these matches, it's okay. They're tolerable. Right. But when Watts takes over, it's really bad. In one of the Abyss matches I watched, it's pretty good up until the overbooking kicks in. And Kid Cash runs in, and he is trying to do a Rana, but Watts is supposed to catch him and powerbomb him, but he barely catches him below the knee, and I thought he was going to rip his leg out of the socket.
Right.
Because of how awkwardly he throws him down. Now, did you see a match that he had? This would have been back during the Don Callis feud against a guy named Kevin Northcutt, who was one of the red shirt security guys.
I didn't watch their one-on-one match.
Okay, because this match, Erik Watts does the worst head scissors.
Oh God,
ever.
I like that now.
Mike Tenay calls it a hurricanrana. It's not even close. So he sets up a rocker dropper or a famouser, depending on who you are. He sets that up and then does a head scissors out of it because he can't just do a head scissors. And it's and he does a Fez press in this match too, where he, between his feet and the mat, you can maybe get a stick of chewing gum. It is the most low altitude Fez press I've ever seen, and he winds up losing this match. It takes two guys, and he gets punched with handcuffs, and there's a ref bump.
All of his matches were overbooked, and you mentioned red shirt security. So one of the other matches that I watched, I had to look up on the TNA app, was Erik Watts with Raven and Sandman versus red shirt security in a TNA Clockwork Orange House of Fun match.
I know that's on our gimmick list for
if you don't know, there's like a cord or a rope surrounding the ring with weapons hanging, and you can kind of take them or whatnot. It's not a good match. There people blade like right away. like it's just ridiculous.
They're waiting in the entrances.
Right. His final match with TNA, and this is when they had the 6-sided ring, was with Raven at TNA Final Resolution 2005. And this was also a bad match, not just because of Erik Watts, though. Raven was very out of shape at this point. And it was just like, as a fan, like you can see every time Raven like kneels down to tell him what's coming next. like when you can tell that so obviously, it's not good stuff. Now,
one thing before we leave here, I would want to mention is there is a match I watched. Part of the whole feud was Goldilocks. That it was Sonny Siaki and Erik Watts versus Abyss and Alex Shelley, and Goldilocks and Desire, who was with Siaki, gets involved, and Erik Watts' wife, Georgie Watts, gets involved. and I had to look it up, and they act like she's always been there. But I don't know if she had made an appearance before this. I didn't find anything. But I did look it up, and apparently that was his real wife, Georgie Watts.
Okay.
I just wanted to mention that he actually gave Erik Watts got his wife an appearance on TNA.
And I don't know if he's still married to her, but be that as it may, let's just finish up before we give some final thoughts here.
Yeah.
Now, that match with Raven was the last match I found on the Ringside website that kind of lists his match listing. It is worth noting some of his All Japan stuff. A lot of it was tag stuff. He would tag with Steve Williams. He and Steve Williams have a victory over Kenta Kobashi and Kentaro Shiga. Which is just crazy to me. Now, I know Steve Williams is a tough dude and was
and got a huge push in Japan. They love Steve Williams.
Yeah, I mean, he had a couple singles things, but mostly Erik Watts was on the losing end. He would team with Johnny Ace and Stan Hansen, and so that's about what you get with his All Japan run. Now, as I said, the Raven match was his last match, but he apparently did work on the indie circuit after this. He would work for the Georgia-based Great Championship Wrestling promotion. He also appeared with AWA Superstars of Wrestling, defeating Diamond Dallas Page for the vacant International Heavyweight Championship on February 4th, 2005 in Arizona. And that match was apparently refereed by Mick Foley. Couldn't find that anywhere. The title was then retired by the AWA Board of Directors later that year. In November 2009, he returned to Great Championship Wrestling, which is now based in Phoenix City, Alabama, and to be the promotion's booker. He was also playing an authority role in their weekly events. I've never seen one of their shows, but the idea of that is scary to me. So one of the titles, Leonard, that he held that we haven't talked about, and I actually Googled this promotion and could not find anything, was NWA Spinebuster. He apparently was the NWA Spinebuster heavyweight champion. Do you know anything, Leonard, about NWA Spinebuster?
No. Did you find out like you said you found nothing, like where they were out of, or
no? It just brought up modern NWA.
Okay.
So
no, I mean I know that there were a crap ton of like minor NWA affiliates in like the early aughts to teens before kind of Billy Corgan wrangled that all in. I was watching actually NWA Hollywood on some, far up there, like DirecTV channel for a while, like, channel 600 or something. I don't remember what the channel was. But I do know that there were a bunch of tiny little NWA affiliates. So it wouldn't surprise me if this was some fly-by-night.
Yeah. And, I don't know about you, Leonard, but I only go through page 1 of Google. Like, it's dangerous to go beyond page 1. Wouldn't you agree?
Most of the time. Especially what you're looking up. Especially if it's an image search as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So at this point, I want to talk about the shoot interview that I watched. Mm-hmm. And I have to admit, I only watched, I think I was up to 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Oh, God. I did not watch any Erik Watts shoot interviews. I did watch a few things you mentioned, what Bruce Pritchard said, Bischoff said, Steve Austin said. But I saw some clips of Watts talking, but it wasn't necessarily about Post-2000, so I didn't watch it. Anyway.
Right. I checked a couple different clips. There was one clip that wasn't as long. It was like over 10 minutes. But this shoot interview was over 3 hours. It's by Chat Grapple and Cheap Pops. And, two guys hosting this. And they interview people on a regular basis, it seems. And you know what? All the credit in the world to those guys for being able to land, all these different personalities. What I'm about to say is not a knock on them or their show. But it would like I said, I'm like 2 hours and 20 minutes in, and it's just Erik Watts talking about himself and not really about his career, hardly at all. Like, it's just stories that Erik Watts is talking about, and most of them are just about how great he is. And so here's the thing. Mm-hmm. I must preface my comments here by saying I do not know Erik Watts. I've not met Erik Watts, and I doubt that we're ever going to hang out anytime soon. But I'll just say my comments come from what I saw and observed through the various clips that I watched on YouTube. He doesn't seem to me like a guy that I would want to be around. And the reason I say that is I've been around guys, many guys, as I'm sure you have, Leonard, that are bullshit artists. And, it's like tough to, like, once you catch them in one lie, like, it's tough to believe anything they say. And it just seems like when they're only talking about themselves and their own accomplishments, it just kind of builds and builds and builds to the point where you're looking, it's just like, maybe, like, is anything this person's saying factual? Like, so I say all that because, here's some of the people that Erik Watts takes credit for discovering. He takes credit for the discovery of Fit Finlay, Kane, Chris Benoit. He takes credit for having The Rock turned heel. I will repeat that. He takes credit for having The Rock turned heel.
How? The Rock probably doesn't even know Erik Watts.
Right. So here's what he says. He's like, well, I know somebody in the company, and I saw that they were, billing him as this face, and the fans were, spitting it out. And so I called said person. I don't want to mention any names. And I said, oh, man, you got to turn that guy heel and have him run through people, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, then the guy turns heel. So
considering that Erik Watts was getting horrible heat as a face and was just like, they love me.
And yeah, to the point, you say they love him. Another thing that I found, this is basically at the point of this show where I stopped. Mm-hmm. And that was, him talking about how apparently in WCW, if you wanted your fan mail, you had to ask for it. And apparently he got thousands and thousands of letters after only 2 appearances on television.
Nope.
And 3 big, huge bags of fan mail.
No.
And so this is the kind of stuff that was being talked about in this show. And I don't know, these guys were the hosts. We're very excited to just have him on. And I get that totally. From our end, if the Gambler was ever on, we'd be very excited as well.
Right. And he could just sit and talk and tell stories about all the fan mail he got.
Right.
For dropping on Saturday night.
But you see what I mean, Leonard, when I talk about, like, bullshit artists. I'm sure you've met people like this.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just like, that's basically what this show was. And basically him talking about how great his dad was and how his dad could beat up anybody. And he's talking about how much of a badass he was. And he's like, oh, people always talk about how Steve Regal was a badass. And he's like, I laugh at that. I could take this person. I could take that person. But like, that's the kind of stuff that was in this shoot interview. And like I said, it's not really even a shoot interview. Maybe the last 40 minutes are a typical shoot interview. But like, I guess it's a shoot in that he's just talking crap about certain people. I don't know.
It's him talking non-kayfabe, out of character, out of the wrestling business. I think they call anything a shoot.
Right.
It's either a shoot or it's, whoever shoots on, like Leonard Hager shoots on Chad Webb and their time, together. And it doesn't mean anything. The word shoot doesn't mean anything anymore.
Right. And by the way, like I said, again, no criticism of the hosts. If they ever see this, I would love to have a chat with them here. about about their show. I would love to just have
Sure.
a chat with them as a sign of good faith.
Yes. Well, I don't know if they would candidly talk about Erik Watts, but it would be interesting if they picked it, because I gotta be honest, if we had Erik Watts and he did that, we would probably let him do it. I mean, I don't see.
Oh yeah. No. That's why I say I don't criticize. Like if he was just talking at length, like at some point I'd probably try to interject and been like, well, hey, what about this? You know? But anywho, that is, pretty much about the research that I found. And again, that was a lot of him bragging, and it just came off not very good to me in general. And like the other interviews that I saw that he did were not any better. Just basically, either defending his dad or talking about how great his dad was, and how great he is and all this kind of stuff. So, my final thoughts on Mr. Erik Watts is that I think that, he could do some moves. And I guess according to him, a lot of people talked about how much potential he had and all this. I don't see that potential in the matches that I've seen, whether it be WCW first run, WWF, WCW second run, onward and upward, whatever the run. I didn't see the potential that he had. I saw somebody that was obviously loved the business, but was, in it because he didn't really know much else, most likely, other than football. And he just never was able to get to that second year of becoming even a mid-card guy. So I am not a huge fan of what I saw. This episode was tough to research. So, Leonard, what do you think? Final thoughts.
Between 1992 when he debuted and then his TNA run, which we talked about, that's 10 to 12 years. He didn't get any better.
Right.
He was no better. And the reason, and this is my opinion, is probably because Erik Watts didn't think he needed to get any better.
Yes, I agree.
Like, you talk about him being a bullshit artist, and there's two kinds. One is, I would say, a guy like a Paul Heyman who knows he's full of crap.
Right.
And he's selling you a bill of goods, and he knows it. And then a guy like Erik Watts believes his own hype.
Yeah.
Erik Watts isn't, in his back of his mind, he's not like, oh, I know I'm lying about this. I know I'm putting people on. I know I'm saying this. He believes it's true. It's false, but he believes it's true because of the mentality and the mindset that he has. And, I believe I said this when we kicked off the show, he carries himself like a main eventer. He carries himself like he's God's gift to wrestling, which, as you said, at best, he maybe could have been turned into a serviceable mid-carder.
Right.
He had the right people who could work with him. Again, the matches with Abyss, I thought, were fine. And I think a lot of that was, even Abyss was green at this point, but I think it was the fact you watch things like he hits a scoop slam, Abyss goes up for him, Yeah. You watch those things, and Abyss, who's been in for a cup of coffee, seems to be a better worker with better psychology and can hit the moves better and knows what he's doing better than a guy that at this point was a 12-year veteran.
And you know what? Side note, Abyss, I really like a lot. Think he's very underrated.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree. Abyss understood ring psychology. And, as I think Conrad Thompson talked about on one of his podcasts when he was sitting down with X-Pac, they were, looking at a match with Stephen Amell, who was the actor Stephen Amell in the match. And X-Pac commented to Conrad something to the effect of, he's got the moves down, but you can tell that how new he is because it's the stuff in between the moves that he doesn't get yet. And that is a good way to explain Erik Watts, although there were certain moves he couldn't even do. So.
Right. But it was all very much, again, spot.
The hesitation makes this.
Yes. That's what it was. That's what every single match of his was. And again, the fact that he's 12 years in and he couldn't figure it out. I mean, that speaks volumes, because there's tons of guys that even guys that we mentioned, like, Mantar, Ranger Ross, these guys, you could see improvements from day one to later.
Absolutely.
Even the worst workers, you can see improvements, because they start getting it more, or it's just repetition, or again, another thing, they're in there with a guy that will walk them through it and they'll follow.
Right.
Erik Watts won't follow anybody.
Right.
Like you can put him. I would be interested to see, like, if he ever had a match against Flair in WCW. I don't know. I didn't look it up. I didn't run across anything. But I would be
imagine Flair laughing at that.
Yes, because I would be interested to see if
he had matches with Arn.
Right. Right. Yeah. We know we have, and Arn's another guy, that if you listen to him, you'll do. And I've heard Arn. We talked about this on the Tom McGee episode. Right. That Arn hated working with Tom McGee because Tom McGee wouldn't listen. I think, if I remember correctly, it was a complaint he had, that he just didn't get it, and he didn't want to get it, and he wouldn't follow. And I think that would be, and I would be very interested to see, like, Watts versus Flair, because again, the idea is that Flair can get a match out of a broomstick. The broomstick has to help.
Right.
Would Erik Watts help?
Right.
So that would be what I would be interested in. But I think, again, I hate to totally bury the guy, but yeah, it was very, as you said, this was a very painful episode this week.
Right. Yeah, it was not a ton of fun, but we hope that you had fun listening to it and listening to our opinion of Erik Watts. And if you disagree, please let us know, and please let us know why. That's the most important part.
The reason why is because they are Erik Watts.
Right. Excuse me. So
that's what Erik Watts does to you. He gives you COVID. You watch enough Erik Watts matches, and you contract COVID-19 just by the awfulness of it. Your body breaks down.
Right.
You just can't handle any more of it.
That's true. That'll be our next shirt. Erik Watts gave me COVID-19.
I don't think we'd get sued over.
We might.
Yeah, you get sued over that. That's libel.
All right. Well, yes, let us know in the comments your favorite Erik Watts memory, please, if you have one, or your least favorite. And next week, we will bring you something totally different and something more exciting, probably. But this was a lot of fun.
Put it in the probably. We need that.
Absolutely. And check us out on Apple Podcasts and or Spotify. Click the like button on our YouTube video and subscribe to our channel. Every little bit helps. Thank you for being with us this week amidst my viral issues that I got from Erik Watts, clearly.
Yes.
And for Leonard, my name is Chad. We will see you next week, and Alexa will see you out.